Now, because of this global supply shock when it comes to crude oil that every nation is witnessing nowadays because of the West Asian crisis, India is also witnessing price pressures. Okay, this particular topic you can associate with the economy section of your prelims syllabus. Now, the second data release of CPI has come up and it has pointed out a very disturbing fact that the retail inflation is 10-month high and it has reached 3.2% in February 2026. And this is largely driven by the food inflation and the rise in the price of precious metal, that is gold and silver. Now, earlier you were getting low inflation rate because of the statistical base effect. What is base effect? When you have higher base, okay, that means the base year, in that you have higher price index. So then even if there is a rise in price in this year, then also you will be getting a low inflation rate. But if in the base year you have low inflation, okay, or low price index, then you will witness a higher increase in the inflation rate. Let's understand this with the help of this example. So in case 1, price index of January 2016 is 110 and that of January 2017 is 120. Okay, so what you have to do? The current price index, deduct the previous price index divided by the previous price index into 100 and this comes out to be roughly around 9%. The same thing we do in case 2. In March 2017, the price index was 180. As you can see, the price index was high in the base year. And this year, in 2018, it has increased to 190. Just 10% difference here and just 10% difference here also. But you see the change in the inflation rate. It is coming out to be 5%. So, if the prices are higher in the base year that you are considering for inflation calculation, then even if the prices have risen in this year, it would be resulting in a lower percentage inflation rate, and that is what was happening previously. Okay, but now since we have changed the base year when it comes to CPI, now this base effect is no more operating, and also because of the West Asian crisis, we are witnessing a rise in the inflation level. Now, let's just try and understand that what all changes we have done in the new CPI series. So, we have changed the base year. So, it has been shifted from 2012 to 2022 because this 2022 base year that we have taken, that was not representative of the current household consumption pattern. So, to effectively capture the current household consumption pattern, we have changed the base year. Then we have adopted the international best practice. We have now come up with 12 division in place of 6 groups. So earlier we had this 6 group, that is food and beverages, housing, pan, tobacco and toxicants, fuel and light, then clothing and footwear and miscellaneous. But now as you can see, we have come up with 12 divisions. This is in alignment with classification of individual consumption according to purpose. Okay. Now since we have also come up with this 12 divisions instead of these 6 divisions that we have previously, this would enable us to do an effective comparison with the inflation level prevailing in other countries also. So this would ensure global comparability of India's CPI, and classification of items is according to uses. This would enable us to get a more granular data set when it comes to the inflation rate that is prevailing in different segments, for example, health, transport, etc. Then we have revised the weight also. As you can see, previously when it comes to food and beverages, here it was assigned a weight of 45.86%, but now this has been reduced to 36% roughly. So weights have also been changed, and we have also revised the basket of goods being covered. So number of goods being covered, that has increased, services covered, that has also increased, and we have eliminated certain items, for example VCR, CVD, DVD players, hiring charges, etc., which are not that much consumed when it comes to today's consumers. Okay, so this has been removed. So you can get a prelims question on this thing, that which all item has been removed and which all items have been added. Okay, so there you can apply common sense also. You know that whether this item is consumed by you being a new generation or not. And what all additions we have done? So we have incorporated rural housing, online media services, OTT platforms, value-added dairy products, barley and its products, pen drive, hard disk. So instead of this DVD player and all, what we are incorporating pen drives, external hard disk, attendant, babysitters and exercise equipments, because this people are becoming more and more gym freak. Yes or no? Okay, people are becoming more aware about their physical health as well. That is why excise equipment are also being incorporated. Now, when it comes to the price collection methodology, that has also undergone a change. So, physical market price collection, that is continuing, that we used to do previously also. However, to capture the changing purchasing behavior when it comes to consumer, we are also going to come up with alternative data sources. What are those alternative data sources? So, we will be doing this e-commerce price introduction. Okay. Then we will be going through online sources for select services, for example, OTT subscription and all, how much people are paying for this, and administrative data for standardized services such as rail fares, postal charges and fuel prices. What all prices you are paying for this, getting the railway services, postal services, fuel prices, etc. So these are the changes that we have introduced in the CPI series. Now coming back to the inflation scenario when it comes to India, why the inflation rate is increasing? First and foremost is the food inflation. And it is going to increase further because the scientists are predicting that we will be witnessing El Nino effect in the middle of the monsoon this year. So, in the normal year, what happens is the trade winds flow in this particular direction and they take the warm surface water from here near the South America to this side, okay, towards the Australia and Asia side. So, this leads to upwelling of the cold water from below, and this is good for this fishing industry and all. But what happens in El Nino year, this trade winds which were moving in this direction along the equator earlier, they become weakened. So due to weakening of these trade winds, now what would happen? The warm surface water would be carried towards the coast of South America, okay, towards this Peru coast of South America. And this would lead to generation of a low pressure area in this area. When there is a low pressure, ultimately the monsoon winds which were supposed to enter into India, they would be attracted towards this low pressure area, and ultimately this would be leading to lower monsoon rainfall when it comes to India. So El Nino is not that much good for India. So when the rainfall would be reduced, ultimately this would be impacting the agriculture productivity, and in turn this would be leading to rise in the food prices. So this is a concern highlighted by the expert because of the climatic factors. Then another factor being the disruption in the fertilizer supply. Okay, as you can see here that when it comes to India, we import more than 60% of our sulfur from West Asia to produce the sulfuric acid, which is an essential ingredient when it comes to the fertilizer industry. So if the fertilizer prices are going to increase, that means the input cost of agriculture is going to increase. That would get reflected in the ultimate food prices also. And another reason why we are witnessing heightened inflation is because of this rise in the prices of precious metals. So when it comes to India, we used to import roughly 40% of the rough diamonds from West Asia region, and this is one reason. Another reason being, whenever you will see that there is there is increase in uncertainty at the global level, people would run behind this precious metals. Why? You need to understand the consumer behavior. Now, whenever there would be uncertainty, usually we witness inflation, and that is what we are witnessing currently also. Crude oil prices have escalated. So, what is happening because of this is, when there is inflation, we know that the purchasing power of money would go down. So, I would not prefer holding that cash, because I know that even if I keep this cash in my locker, this would not be able to give that much amount of goods and services which I was able to purchase earlier before this inflation. So since whenever there is global uncertainty, there is increase in inflation, and that reduces the purchasing power of money. So instead of this, what I'll prefer? I'll prefer to invest this money in precious metals, that is gold and silver, okay? Because due to this uncertainty, their demand is going to increase, and ultimately they would be giving you a higher return because their prices would increase further. Okay, so that is the reason currently West Asian crisis going on. So because of that, global uncertainty is there, and because of that you can see that the prices of gold and silver has skyrocketed. Another reason why in the upcoming times we are going to witness more inflation in India, because crude oil, LPG, LNG all have become very costly. When the crude oil is going to increase, that means the input cost of the industries is going to increase, and whenever input cost is going to increase, ultimately the private sector is not sitting for doing any charity here. That final cost burden would be borne by you and me, the final consumers. Okay, so this I told you in the last session also, this is going to lead to this import led inflation in India, because the prices of crude oil has escalated. And this is a kind of cost push inflation. because the prices of raw materials are increasing. It is not because of the demand factor. That is the reason in today's article it has been pointed out that it is going to be a very difficult exercise for the Monetary Policy Committee to bring down the inflation, because then this time the inflation is not because of rise in demand, it is because of the supply shock. And this is one of the limitation of monetary policy. Monetary policy is well suited to deal with that inflation scenario wherein the rise in inflation is because of increase in demand. It can curtail that demand by increasing the interest rate. But when the inflation is because of the supply shock, therein this tightens the hand of the Monetary Policy Committee to how to deal with this inflation scenario. Because if they try to increase the interest rate, okay, that you pay on the loans, this is going to further negatively impact the growth scenario as well, because it would become difficult to get the loans at a subsidized rate. And if this is going to negatively impact the investment, ultimately GDP would get impacted. Okay, so the article rightly points out that we cannot merely rely on monetary policy as well as fiscal policy. That is so something that you have to do in this window of opportunity, the limited time that you have, temporary period. But in the long run, you need to move in the direction of energy security. We need to expedite alternative sources of fuel. We need to reduce our dependence upon crude oil or not. That means we need to make a shift towards the green energy, renewable energy. Okay, that's all that we need to with respect to this particular topic. Let's move on to the next one.